In God of War Ragnarok, Tyr is not Tyr, his Odin. Except for the Tyr we find later, that Tyr is Tyr, but this Tyr, the main Tyr we hang out with in most of the game, is not Tyr, he's Odin. What did Odin accomplish by being Tyr, besides eating Brock's sausage and then sticking a knife in his gut? Did this disguise help him achieve his goals at all, or did he just sit around doing nothing? Well, of course he did, otherwise this video wouldn't exist, and the sitting around and doing nothing is actually a part of it. As Mimir points out, Odin's ways are extremely subtle and manipulative, and the actions the Old Father took in his guise could not raise any suspicion, but upon further investigation of what the imposter Tyr did and said, it becomes clear that this charade was instrumental in Odin's plan. Some are very on the surface, some are very subtle, so let's get through those. The first thing that this guy's accomplished I want to quickly point out is the most obvious one, but I have to say it because otherwise I'll get non-stop comments. Surveillance. Odin disguised his Tyr to be directly aware of what his enemies are planning.
And give us a pair of eyes in the enemy's inner sanctum.
Or one eye. Odin doesn't have a pair of eyes. That's some self-deprecating humor right there. Odin is able to know every step Kratos and company intend to make, learn what they learn, and eat their supplies. Again, I know this is obvious, but I still need to point that out. Number 2, to kill morale. This is the part where Odin doing nothing as Tyr is part of the plan. In 2018, we spent a lot of time learning that Tyr was a beacon of hope for those who opposed the Aesir, a capable warrior and leader who always took active steps towards bringing peace, his temple being the shining example of that. And of course, in Valhalla, we saw that Tyr is very much the capable warrior the legends painted him to be, and is clearly able to unite and lead the realms against Odin. Odin could not have that, and so everything about Odin's performance as Tyr is constructed to be the opposite of what the real Tyr is, a borderline, insane, tired, pathetic man, a coward who adjourned all violence, a man who is trying to be a disappointment in every facet.
I haven't given up hope on you.
Oh, you really must.
Only capable of sleeping in a broom closet and cooking passable dirt soup. He's doing everything in his power to make his enemies lose hope, to show that a god even as powerful and willful as Tyr can be broken, and that they should basically give up. He didn't have answers to anyone's questions, he didn't lend his help in battle or provide any meaningful counsel, all to enforce the belief that Odin had already won. Of course, as fate would have it, posing Tyr in this light encouraged Kratos to step up and fill the Tyr role as the one to unite and lead the realms in Ragnarok, and eventually even become the Norse god of war, but that's just an observation and really besides the point. But these two aspects are relatively minor compared to Odin's actual reason to become Tyr. Let's take a step back for a second. What is Odin's ultimate goal? Knowledge and control of his own fate. Trying to change the prophesized outcome of Ragnarok. The primary and easiest way to achieve that is to obtain the knowledge contained within the rift, but sadly, the piece of the mask he found had foreign writing he could not understand, so he turned to Plan B, eliminating the causes of Ragnarok. Mainly trying to eliminate all the Jotnar, overflowing the realms with the dead, controlling Skoll and Hati, imprisoning those who opposed him like Tyr and Mimir, all that good stuff, we're familiar with it. Odin was all around pretty successful with it, except the giants escaped to Jotunheim and the realm tower vanished, so the threat of the Jotnar ending him at Ragnarok remained real. But there were rumors of the last Guardian, a giant left in Midgard who could reveal how to get to their home realm, so the Raven King sent his son Balder to find them. The last Guardian turned out to be dead, and so did Balder, causing Fimbulwinter. So Odin lost that lead, but he found something even better. The Guardian's son, a young Jotun with a strong affinity for languages. And even better, the Jotun was a young, impressionable teenager at his rebellious stage, often sneaking out and desiring to break free from his overly strict and protective father. A perfect candidate for some prime classic trademarked Odin manipulation. And with the kid's unique ability, Plan A, finding the mask, was back on the table, meaning that Odin didn't need to find a way into Jotunheim anymore. The biggest problem is, the Jotun made friends with some of Odin's greatest enemies. Between his ex-wife and his disgruntled former employee, the boy was not exactly getting an unbiased view of Odin or the Aesir. In fact, he hated them, eager to start Ragnarok just to end them. In order to lure Loki in, he would need to change that view. The Allfather wouldn't be able to do it himself naturally, but there was someone who Loki would listen to, someone he admired and revered.
Tyr!
A savior of the giants and an exemplary showcase of what a god should be. A god whose advice and opinion Loki would listen to without hesitation, and a god who advocated peace, a trait Odin could exaggerate to the extreme to fit his own goals of preventing war against Asgard. All Odin had to do was to use the Tyr disguise to somehow convince Loki that war is not the best option, and that instead he should go to Asgard and help him find the rest of the mask and open the rift. The true purpose of the Tyr disguise is to manipulate Loki into doing his bidding. So, how did he do it? Step 1. Come to Loki's house, plant the idea of coming to Asgard, and use reverse psychology to ensure the boy and his father go searching for Tyr. Step 2. Basically, do the first 2 points I described. Be useless as Tyr. Show him that his hero is truly pathetic. Have no answers for Loki. Crush any hope that Tyr could be the one to help fight against Odin and unite the realms. Force him to think of alternative ways to find his answers. Step 3. This one will take longer to explain, but this step might be the most subtle and genius thing in this entire game. It's honestly the reason I'm making this video, and that thing can be described in one word: Alfheim. The Alfheim section of Ragnarok is one of those cases where it feels completely different on follow-up playthroughs compared to the first, all thanks to the knowledge that Tyr is Odin. This realization reveals that it's about so much more than just trying to reach Groa's shrine. If you pay attention, you can notice that throughout this whole section, Kratos barely ever says a word. Up until reaching the light, the Alfheim mission is a massive conversation between Tyr and Atreus, and Mimir chimes in too, of course. Effectively, this is by far the longest conversation Odin and Loki have in the game, and Odin uses this time and the context of the ongoing state of the realm to completely change Atreus' worldview. On a first playthrough, it appears that they're merely having a conversation about the elves and their war, but the word of the day is subtext, because after completing the story, it becomes apparent that this is about so much more than that. Let's lay the basis. Before they even reach the realm, Loki and Tyr have this interaction.
So then we fought our way through an army of dark elves to get to the light.
You interfered in the Elf War.
Not by choice. We sought to fill our Bifrost, and they attacked us.
And the dark elves were covering it with their sticky hive stuff. When we freed it, light elves came back. Things seemed better in Alfheim.
Did they now?
As we know, in 2018, Atreus had a very black and white view of the Elvish War, believing that the Dark Elves are bad and the Light Elves are good because he is racist. He has the same sentiment before coming to Alfheim in Ragnarok, but the hints from the Dark Elf King, as well as Tyr's sarcastic response, suggest that this is not at all the case. As they make their way through the barren land and the Temple of Light, Atreus learns that the Light Elves are as hostile as the Dark, that the two kinds used to be one, and that they both want control of the light for their own self-ish reasons. Sorry, I couldn't resist. After finally reaching the light, this exchange happens.
Tyr,
Yes?
did we help the wrong side?
Are you certain that's the right question?
What's the right question?
Is there a right side?
Exactly. What do you think, Atreus? Is there a right side in this war?
I don't know.
Then perhaps you shouldn't pick one.
After everything he just saw for himself, Atreus' view on the matter is completely shattered. He no longer has the same black and white view of this war, or war in general. On the first playthrough, on the surface, the conversation is about the elves, but the subtext is entirely different. This is Odin who's telling Atreus all those things, and Odin doesn't care about elves. His message is the same, but the point is different. He wants to change Loki's mind about the Aesir. Just as he had an entirely negative experience with the Dark Elves, he had an entirely negative experience with Odin's tribe. But Atreus learns that things are not that simple, that war is not that simple. That concerns the war for the light, and it concerns Ragnarok.
This vision of me in your mind, where I'm as good as Odin is evil, the truth is always more complicated. To imagine it's simple is dangerous.
That the Aesir are people too, that they would suffer from this war too.
Just the destruction of an entire realm, is it? To say nothing of its citizenry, its wildlife, those ignorant and innocent of Odin's misdeeds.
By using the Elvish War as an example, Odin plants an idea in Atreus' head. An idea that perhaps the Aesir are not as purely evil as he thought, and that war, something Atreus really wanted to happen, the reason he sought to rescue Tyr, is not the best course of action. And the ironic thing is that Kratos agrees. He told Atreus the same thing the last time they were in Alfheim.
Why are they killing him? He didn't do anything.
Do not assume. You are seeing the end of a war, boy. You do not know what led to this moment.
If two gods of war claim this to be the nature of war, then it must be true. This is the hardest part of Odin's plan, to entirely shift a young, idealistic teenager's mind on the Aesir and on going to war against them. And he managed to succeed. He used Tyr's authority as a peacekeeper and a god of war, and the example of an existing conflict to sway Loki's beliefs in his favor. And he did it without telling a single lie. I believe this is the primary display of Odin's true power in the entire game. His ability to subtly manipulate and sway things with nothing but words. This is the true purpose and benefit of the Tyr disguise. Listening in helps, learning the true prophecy of Ragnarok certainly helps, but using his disguise and the present circumstances to achieve his goals yielded results that Odin in his true form could never achieve. And that's not even all. A secondary interaction Tyr has with Mimir regards Freyr.
Freyr never bothered returning to Alfheim, did he, Mimir?
And how the Vanir god left Alfheim, causing the elven peace he held to fall back into war again. Here's what this conversation ends with.
Can we really place all the blame on Freyr? This war started long before his arrival.
But he had the power to heal this land and end the war, did he not?
He made his choice.
The wrong one.
For Alfheim, perhaps, but not necessarily for him.
Well, I suppose we're all entitled to walk our own paths, regardless of where they end.
I believe this particular thread subtextually refers to Odin's obsession with the rift in Asgard. Tyr claims that since Freyr had the power to stop the war for good, he should have done it no matter the personal cost. Similarly, we know he believes that looking into the rift to stop Ragnarok and find whatever answer Odin seeks is worth any price. Atreus is not part of this particular interaction, but knowing how carefully he listens and values everything Tyr claims, it may have also contributed to him sharing Odin's beliefs. But that's more of a secondary thing. To sum up, at the start of the game, Atreus was very certain what needed to be done. He would rescue Tyr, and the god would lead them to war to defeat the evil Aesir. After a short trip to Alfheim, that idea and those beliefs are destroyed. And that is the hardest part of Odin's plan done. Step 4, continue to pull son and father apart. And that happens incredibly easily. Atreus is already obsessed with going out to find answers, the purpose of Loki and the champion of the Jotnar, and will soon also learn that his father is destined to die, while Kratos insists he stays safe and does nothing. And so, a strategically placed
A meal fit for a champion?
is the last straw that breaks the fucking gratitude's back. Of course, Odin could never predict that Atreus would accidentally teleport himself to Jotunheim and disappear for 2 days, but it certainly helped. At that point, it was pretty much done. Kratos would never let Atreus find answers on his own, so the boy could only turn to one person who could, Odin, which is where his invitation to Asgard in step 1 comes in real handy. And just like that, having escaped his friends and family, the Allfather's plan is complete. He has Loki on his side to finish the mask. After this, the role of the Tyr disguise is pretty much fulfilled. Of course, he would continue listening in, try and persuade Kratos and Freya to do things that benefit Odin, mostly letting Atreus do his thing.
The boy seems quite capable, perhaps if you simply give him some time.
But if you pay attention, after Loki leaves for Asgard, Tyr really takes a back seat as a character until the cover is blown, because at this point, the main goal is achieved. He doesn't really need to do anything, and he can't do much given his disguise. The real reason Odin became Tyr is to sway Loki to come to his side, and by using subtle words and the example of the Elvish War, he manages to succeed. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.